UConn in the Big East. Now that just feels right. From 1979 to 2013, it always did. From the highs to the lows, to the buzzer beaters, to the titles, to the moments of greatness, to the players who wrote their legend. This league is one of a kind. You can't take a game off. Matter of fact, you can't take a minute off or anything else. The coaches, the fans, the incredible atmosphere. This is special. It's the Big East. The Huskies are back, and it's good to be home.
What a big day in the Big East, and with that, we've got a new episode of Shootaround, an at-home edition, but that's what it calls for with the UConn Huskies, the 7-time Big East tournament champions, back in the conference, and somebody that knows all too well about that is my special co-host for today, a two-time All-Big East selection. He was part of 2 Big East regular season championship teams, and now you can find him all across Fox Sports, breaking down college basketball, and UConn Husky fans, you're going to like that. It's Donnie Marshall joining us today. And Donnie, you played in the Big East. Now you cover it. What does UConn being back in the Big East mean for the conference, the program, and really the sport of college hoops?
You know, it's almost, John, it's almost like an old relative that moved out of town and now they come back into town, you know, that cousin that went away and now they come back, 7 years later or so. Actually, I had to dig through to find this. This thing's been dusted up for about 7 years. So I had to dust it off, put it back up. No, but it's exciting for everyone. We can, and I know people are going to get into the financial aspect of it, who needed what, how much, what's this going to cost, but let's leave all that, the money stuff, to the people who understand that, who live that every day. And let's talk about what it means to the fans, what it means to, the people of the Big East, the fans of the Big East, the fans of Connecticut in-state. And I think off the top, listen, we're going to be obviously men's basketball centric, but you can't help, if you're a Connecticut fan and you live in Connecticut like I do, to mention Geno Auriemma and the women's team coming back in. So I think, in all fairness, again, he's one of my golf buddies, so I have to give Geno love. To me, the greatest college basketball coach ever, and I really mean that, not just because he's my friend, but because of what he's done. Now, when we shift to talk about men's basketball and the things that we've missed, since the realignment, if you will, this is, I think, what everyone in Connecticut has been waiting for. There's been talk about Big Ten. There's been talk about ACC. UConn is back home where they belong after a little bit of a hiatus. And I don't know if there's anyone, at least that I know, more excited than me to have my guys and my young fellas back in the conference.
Now with Fox Sports, Donnie, you cover games all throughout the season. UConn fans have been accustomed to the American here over the last 7 years. What are they about to see in this rendition of the Big East?
I think there will be a little bit more emphasis on playing to the level of your competition. And that's not to disrespect the AAC and everything that they had done over the last 6 or 7 seasons. But listen, just realistically, there's a different feeling, again, with all due respect to Tulsa, East Carolina, teams like that. Cincinnati, I'll put in that next level, because to me, Cincinnati is a team that could also play in the Big East, or Power 6, if you will. But some of those, the smaller teams, those teams that we've been used to being mid-major teams, there's just a different feel when you're playing Villanova on a Thursday or Friday night. You're playing Georgetown on Saturday. You're playing Providence on a Monday or Tuesday. There's just a different feel than when you're playing a Tulsa or Tulane. And I think that feeling of the Big East and being back is what people around here, at least, and around New England absolutely have wanted for a long time. So there's a higher expectation level. And I think that idea of playing to the level of your competition, it only works now in Connecticut's favor, because I think at times, and we've been there as players, where you're playing, especially nowadays, where you're playing, if you're in the Big 10 or 12, whatever it is, if you're playing an opponent in conference and then all of a sudden you get out of conference play and you go play, a team that's in a mid-major team, a lower level team, and now it's like, okay, how do you get up? How do you stay up for that? Well, the great ones figure out how to do it, and I think Danny Hurley and UConn are going to, they're going to get back to that greatness, and it's only going to help that you're playing the Villanovas, the Providence, the Butlers, the Xaviers, night in and night out. That's going to lift your level, and it's going to lift your feeling of, okay, a purpose and having that presence back in the Big East again.
You just brought up Providence, and I think about this version of the Big East. Providence and Seton Hall in particular are two programs that are totally different than the ones that UConn faced in the old Big East. Those programs were in the back half of the standings, if not near the basement. It bears noting here, this is a different set of programs here when you add in those three schools that add on the Catholic Seven, Xavier, Butler, and Creighton. UConn with some familiarity with Xavier and Butler. I find that competition really interesting, and the way that some programs have raised their profiles in this 10-team, now 11-team configuration.
Yeah, raising the profile, John, is so important, because back in the day when let's just throw a name out there, and Eric Williams leaves Providence, or Austin Crozier leaves Providence, Dickie Simpkins. Now you're like, okay, now we have a chance. This is a different team. When Terry DeHare had left Seton Hall, okay, now we have a chance the next year. I love Miles Powell, one of my, not just one of my favorite all-time players, but one of my closest friends now. Alpha Diallo, great kid. These aren't the Seton Halls and the Providence teams where those guys leave, and now it's like, okay, we have a chance. These teams have figured out how to reload. Seton Hall is going to be just as good. You get a Bryce Aiken, you get those grad transfers or those transfers from other schools. You reload. A David Duke comes back now, even more seasoned. Ed Cooley knows that the recruiting is different nowadays. There's no lulls in the Big East. There just aren't. Some schools will have that. You can't afford a lull. Kevin Willard and Ed Cooley understand that. And there aren't those lulls that they used to have when I played, and even 10 years ago, where you think, okay, we get through this season. Miles Powell's gone. Even a Marcus Howard's gone. Now we have a chance. These coaches know how to reload, man. That's the huge difference in today's Big East versus some 10, 20 years ago.
Xavier head coach Travis Steele said it to us this past season. He goes, I can no longer recruit the B or the C kid and just think of develop. I have to go after the A type of kid if I want to win the conference. So recruiting is certainly a fascinating thing. We already know that UConn's been elevating a little bit by having that brand name of the Big East. We've got plenty coming up on this show. We've got Danny Hurley. We've got Geno Auriemma. We've got the legend Jim Calhoun. He's going to stop by, and I'm sure Donnie has a story about him. We've also got a former UConn women's player, Renee Montgomery. We will talk a little bit about the recent events in our world and the social injustice going on in our world, as that is so, so important during these times. And we will take a trip down memory lane with some of the best UConn moments, both men's and women's basketball, in the history of the Big East. Let's tip it off right now with 10-7 on our countdown of UConn moments.
Here's Brown into the front court, crosses over to Butler. He's got to get it off and down.
Saunders with the takeaway. Here's what I mean. Beautiful pass. And he goes to the free throw line.
Yeah, he's feeling it. He got a little bit of hops now.
Back at Madison Square Garden in New York City. Big East championship game, matching the top seed Syracuse against the number 2 seed Connecticut. UConn, in an amazing turnaround, captures the Big East tournament. Let the celebration begin.
You've seen a career best effort today, folks, for Hasheem Thabeet. 10 blocks, his career high. Runs of 15-0 going 20-0 in the second half for UConn. They played great basketball today. They put it all together in the second half and showed themselves how good they can really be.
Hasheem Thabeet, a triple-double with blocks as that third thing. First thing that pops in your head when you think about Hasheem.
Skilled to be able to throw 10 double-digit blocks in there with staying in the game. Nowadays you get a couple of blocks, refs don't care. You get them on the wrist, they're going to call those nickel dimers, as refs likes to say. Also, there's been some great shot blockers at UConn. Donnie Marshall, Emeka Okafor. I mean, there's been some guys who could block some shots. So for Hasheem to do that in a triple-double, that is impressive. Boy.
Well, let's turn to the current state of UConn basketball. And the timing here is interesting because 2 years ago, Dan Hurley takes over the program, and the program needed work to be done on it. Now entering year 3, the Huskies won 9 of their last 11 games. Donnie, what kind of position does he have them in coming into this league?
Confidence. Whenever you finish the season on a winning streak or winning more than losing down the stretch, regardless of how the last game goes for you, you feel a confidence. Obviously we're in a different time now, not being able to have that hands-on, if you will, interaction with your players is, because a lot of coaches will say you get a week or you get 2 weeks, get back in the gym. Obviously, the way this season ended with COVID-19, it's a little different. So I think it's challenging every coach, but it's also probably challenging a coach like Danny Hurley, who hasn't been at the school that long. He's finding new ways to now reach out, communicate. I think that the one thing that a lot of coaches lose when when you're away from your players is that communication skill. Obviously, they know how to yell at us and scream when you're on the floor. But when you're away and now you're forced to stay away, how do you better yourself as a coach and your players with that communication? So that to me will be the toughest thing. But I think we've seen Danny Hurley. I played against him in college. He was always that guy who was never afraid to tell you how he felt. I think he coaches the same way, but you have to do it differently. And I believe that he has done that, especially when you see who they have brought in as far as their recruits, Sanogo, guys that they know are going to help them, in the near future. You have to be a great communicator to be able to do that. So I think Danny Hurley has figured out a way to be a better communicator in the midst of this, the coronavirus, the COVID-19.
Where do you think UConn can fit in the Big East standings?
This is a year, again, even though you lose some studs in the conference, these teams reload. There are some young teams. Georgetown is going to be young. Obviously, Providence, Marquette. These teams that are replacing, they're losing 4 or 5 and they're bringing 6 in. Butler, there are a lot of teams like Xavier. So I think that there's probably not a better time for UConn to make that transition back into the Big East with a chance that you have a Boak Knight, a guy who you understand can lead you. You have some pieces who've been there a few years, albeit they haven't won a ton, but they put their time in and they've been in the trenches with one another, the key guys. You lose a couple good players, obviously, but you bring in some guys who have played some minutes for Dan Hurley. This, to me, is the best time for them. If there was ever a better time to get into the Big East, is now when you're playing against younger teams that we've seen at the top of the Big East. This is the time. I think you have a chance to do something special your first year, and I think the expectations have to be that. It can't be, let's just get in, feel our way through, and I don't think Danny Hurley is built like that. And his players may feel that, we're going to get in the Big East. Maybe some of them, the older guys, are going to say, let's go in and kick some butt right away. Younger guys may be a little hesitant. Danny Hurley, I guarantee you, was saying, listen, we have a great opportunity right now. Let's make some waves early on. Here's a chance.
We talked about the kind of communicator Dan Hurley is. He's a talker. He speaks his mind. He said that coming back to the Big East, when he found out the news last summer, it was the most difficult secret he's ever had to keep before it was news. Let's hear from the head coach now, our conversation with Dan Hurley.
It's obviously a pleasure for us. I mean, it was probably, the hardest secret I've ever had to keep. in my life when I initially found out that the move was likely to happen, and then, definitely going to happen. I didn't even tell my wife, or my kids, with, one of which, attends, my alma mater and current Big East rival Seton Hall. Like I was so afraid that if I told one person that it wouldn't happen, that the news leaking would hurt the deal. But I mean, it was, just an unbelievable moment. Just knew the excitement that it would generate with our fans, with the returning players that obviously we get a chance to play in it, recruits. It's changed like everything about the energy of the program.
When I think about this past season for you guys, you go on the surge to end the season, obviously ended short of what you would have liked to do. But by the same token, within that season came a couple of appetizers. Xavier out in Charleston, Villanova in Philadelphia, both wild, close games. And after the Villanova game, you said, it's coming. When you think about those two meetings and what you've got coming ahead of you from these other 10 teams, what comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, just, how natural, those matchups felt. Guys that my coaching staff, our roster of players, these guys that play at Xavier, that play at Villanova, that play at Georgetown, Seton Hall, Marquette, these are the guys that they've played against, their whole lives, at the AAU level, at camps. There was a natural familiarity, in those games. And then obviously, with all Big East programs, especially, Villanova, Xavier, huge fan bases, that where the rivalry is either renewed, with a Villanova, an old Big East rival, or, a new one in Xavier. And those games felt like, they felt like conference games, when we played them. They were, obviously, we gave ourselves chances, late in both those games, to get wins. They were frustrating losses. They were excruciating losses. But by the same token, I thought we showed tremendous growth from year one to year two, relative to where we were against quality opposition like those two programs. And, it was just an exciting, glimpse into the future, because you could sense the fans on Twitter and social media before and after those games.
Where do you think you fit in this league?
We're hoping that our timing is really good. John, if you had asked me going into year one, where of this rebuild, where would you be going into, in this league? I would say at the dead bottom. I think the timing for us going into, the best basketball conference in the country is really good for us. Obviously, the infusion of talent from year 1 to 2 was significant. There's also going to now be another infusion of talent, into the program, which I think is obviously going to elevate what we're doing. We feel like we've really got our culture in place. Our guys, understand, how to prepare and we relearned how to win. I think we won 9 of our last 11. We won 5 in a row to end the season, and we had as good a chance as anyone in the American to win that conference tournament. Obviously, 4 games in 4 days would have been a challenge, but we had proven we could beat the best teams in that league, and we were playing as good or better than anyone in the conference.
You enter Big East meetings here. I know those meetings were via Zoom, but obviously things are the wheels are rolling here. Any funny story, anything you can share? Maybe a comment from somebody to the new guy in the neighborhood?
I mean, so much has gone on since that meeting. Oh man, yeah. It was, it was just cool. I would say getting in there. A number of those guys, whether, for me, it was surreal. I'll say it was like, you have guys like Jay, that like recruited my players. Like he recruited 2 of my guys as a high school coach when I was at St. Benedict's Prep. So to find myself on a call with a guy that was recruiting my high school players just not too long ago, when I was at St. Benedict's, or seeing Patrick Ewing on the call, who, growing up as a kid was, one of my favorite players and the guy I have so much respect for, or, coaches, guys like Kevin Willard or Ed Cooley, who, I've gone head to head with when I was at Rhode Island, not always successfully, but I've butted heads with those guys. So it's just, like you sense like a real, I'll say this, John, it's like guys in this league, the games, I watch them all too, whenever I can, the last couple of years, but like, I don't know that there's more vicious, more competitive conference games in the country than the Big East. But these guys, like, it really is like a brotherhood with the way that they interact with each other, like on these calls and when you see them on the road in different settings.
It's time for a Fast Break crossover. Big East Fast Break is a weekly women's basketball show throughout the season that you UConn fans will get used to watching. And now we are talking about the 18-time Big East tournament champion, the 11-time national champions, the most successful program in the history of women's college basketball, UConn. And I welcome in my colleague Megan Caffrey with more on Geno Auriemma's Huskies.
Thanks, John. Well, you said it right there. When you're thinking of UConn women's basketball, they have really set the standard in women's college basketball. 11 NCAA tournament titles, national titles. And then you think of it, 38 players have been sent to the WNBA from the Huskies. Just an incredibly dominant program. We had the chance to take a look back at some of the successes that this program has had, as well as hear of a legend herself, Renee Montgomery.
The UConn Huskies bring more back to Big East women's basketball than your usual program. We're talking 11 national championships. That's more than two hands worth. Wow. Names like Rebecca, Svetlana, Diana, Sue, Maya, Tina, Stewie. Those sound familiar? The premier program in the history of the sport. Maybe in the history of all of college sports. Geno Auriemma's UConn Huskies are the gold standard in women's basketball. Teams that exude dominance on the court and are model citizens off of it. WNBA All-Stars, Olympic gold medalists, All-Americans, National Players of the Year, perfect seasons. You name it, the Huskies have done it. And now, the Huskies are home.
I'm so excited to welcome in UConn women's basketball legend and 11-year WNBA veteran, Renee Montgomery. Renee, before we get into any UConn women's basketball talk, you chose to forego the 2020 WNBA season to focus on social justice reform and the work that needs to get done off the court. You said that there were a lot of conversations, prayer that went in behind this decision. What were those conversations like?
Well, you got to think from a parent standpoint, and their child says basically like, I'm going to pause my job for a year. My parents were like, yeah, what? Like they were nervous for me. They were like, oh, okay. But so there was two sides of their feelings. There was the parent side where they're nervous. This is their child. How is the public going to take me? And then the other side where they were proud, And so once I actually made the announcement, and they saw that there wasn't a lot of negative, there wasn't pretty much any negative backlash, they were just like beaming with pride at that point.
What has some of the work that you've started to put in look like so far?
Yeah, so we're starting to get the bones and the structure, so I'm so excited. I'm going to be focusing in on education aspects. And so my mom, if people don't know, she was an educator for 30 years at West Virginia State University. She was a college professor. So she started to talk about how certain programs are lacking in HBCUs and programs that involve creativity. And I feel like creativity is one of my strong suits in the sense that my parents harbored that the whole time I was young. So different programmings for HBCUs is what we're starting to get going. And then I also joined the More Than a Vote campaign with LeBron James. So that was pretty exciting for me.
How can people continue to get involved and join in on your efforts?
Yeah, follow me on Instagram. My foundation is RMF Nonprofit. And a lot of the stuff I'm doing is through my foundation, and just being frankly honest, because it's easier for people to donate to a foundation to get this stuff going because it's a 501c3. So I'll be doing a lot of stuff through my foundation because that's kind of where I wanted my foundation to go anyway.
Mm-hmm. When you go back to the 2019 season, you win the national championship. It was the perfect season. What are some of the memories that you have from that year?
Nervousness. I was a nervous wreck the whole year for so many reasons. Going into that year, we hadn't won a championship yet, so I didn't want to be the loser that went to UConn and didn't get a championship. Everyone gets one when you go there, so I didn't want to be that person. And then the further along the season it went, where we were undefeated, I was like, please don't let our first loss be at the tournament. Like, that was just my whole thought. So once we won, it was more like a yes. Oh my goodness, I have it now. So it was like, a lot of people probably thought I was like floating on cloud nine. I was a nervous wreck.
How would you describe what it was like playing in the Big East in your time at UConn?
What, the Big East was booming. And when I say booming, I mean booming. We had Rutgers, who had Essence Carson, Mattia Javon, Kia Vaughn, Cappy Pondexter. We had Notre Dame. We had DePaul was tough because they were very systematic. We had Louisville, who we played in the championship my senior year with an Angel McCautry, Pitt. We had Shavonte Zealous, Mercedes Walker. Like, I'm telling you, it was booming. Villanova, like, and when I say those certain teams, and people are like, DePaul, those teams give you a hard time. They're if you make a mistake, they will find it. So the Big East was booming. It was the championship game my senior year.
How would you describe the style of court on the play when you're thinking of a Big East matchup?
When I think of Big East matchup, I think of gritty. You know, like, I think of like, it's knockdown, drag out. I think of all the battles. The Big East tournament was, I mean, literally the national championship had Louisville and Connecticut in the championship. So the Big East tournament was hard. It wasn't like, oh, let's go to our conference tournament, run through everybody, get our ring, and no, it wasn't that. It was like, you want to look at the seeding for the Big East, and that's kind of crazy.
What's maybe one of your fondest memories of playing in the Big East? Maybe not a championship game, but one of those just regular season battles.
Well, this was a Big East game. I believe we were playing Pitt. I'm not positive, but this is a fond memory for me, that not necessarily involving the Big East, but I got my jersey retired in the Huskies of Honor while I was active. And so they did it before the game. Terrible idea. I'm crying. My family came. They surprised me. We're all crying. And then coach is like, all right, we got a big game coming up. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So that was special to me because of the emotions. And I'm pretty sure that was a Big East game. So that's how it kind of ties in there.
Mm-hmm. How would you describe what it was like to play under head coach Geno Auriemma?
Godfather. He, like, when I tell you, he is like a father figure to me, and people just don't understand that when you have, everyone sees the coach Auriemma who's yelling and stuff, but we see the coach Auriemma who he threw a party for Obama, you know, for the celebration when Obama got elected. I know the coach Auriemma that's texting me, you know, and checking in on me. I know the coach Auriemma that even before, when he just saw me handing out waters, like, you know, he saw it on the news, he wanted to tell me he's proud of me. So this is the coach Auriemma that I know, the coach Auriemma that when the fans come at us, he goes at them. You know, a lot of times people don't recognize what he does, but as players, we know when he takes the heat off of us. Like, we know when he says something that's like a little bit hot topic because somebody might be getting a lot of heat. But as players, you know, he took us out of the hot seat and put himself in it. So I'm forever grateful for Coach Auriemma, CD, all of them at UConn.
Mm-hmm. When you're looking at how UConn is re-entering the Big East Conference, what is UConn bringing back into the Big East?
UConn is bringing a championship pedigree to the Big East. I mean, simply put, UConn is the standard. They are women's basketball. So when the Big East is getting UConn, they're getting a lot of championships. They're getting a rock star in Coach Auriemma. You know, they're getting a team that's going to handle themselves well. And I think that's important. The Big East, UConn, everyone knows that we conduct ourselves a certain way. You know, we're professionals. So the Big East is getting a lot when they get UConn.
What would you describe the environments that were like when you were playing in the Big East? a conference matchup. What were the fans like? How much more into it did the fans get?
I would equate it to, I think, like AAU, in a sense where on the AAU circuits, everybody kind of knows who plays for that team. We know who plays for the Gauchos. We know who plays for the West Virginia Tornadoes, the West Coast All-Stars. You know the Boo Williams. So you know the players, you're familiar, you guys have played it. So I feel like it's like that because it's the same for the fans. They know the Rutgers players. They know the Louisville players. So there's this almost like, we know you and we're rooting against you and we're back again. It's like a running tab. Like, y'all got us last time. We'll be back, because you know you're going to play them again.
What's a message that you have for the current UConn women's basketball players as they are taking on this new journey of re-entering the Big East, of a message to them of what it's going to be like playing in Big East basketball?
Oh, a message to re-entering the Big East. I would say represent of the Big East for a long time. UConn has done some big things in the Big East, so I want to see more of the same, so keep it going.
Awesome. We are so excited to have UConn back in. Renee Montgomery, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
We've got more UConn men's basketball moments through the years, and for this one, we're going back 18 years ago to 2002 inside Madison Square Garden, a Big East championship on the line. UConn, Pittsburgh, Talik Brown took the mic. When you think about some of your great moments, let's look at the Big East tournament. You won 2 of those, and one of which you hit a legendary half-court shot. What do you remember about that shot against Pittsburgh?
I just remember the time was running down, and I knew I had to get a shot up real quick. I knew I threw a pump fake at half court, took one dribble and threw it up there, helped my follow through, and it went down in net. It's all good.
What was the vibe, from what you remember, around Madison Square Garden during Big East Tournament Week?
It was just crazy. It was a frenzy. Just every time we played at the Garden, we had all our fans from Connecticut come up, just storm the buildings, and just really just dominate. So it's just great being back and playing at the Garden.
First thing that pops in your head when you think about playing for Jim Calhoun?
Tough. Tough, gritty. You gotta be strong to play for him. You gotta be mentally strong, physically. You gotta be ready for the challenge when you're playing for Coach Calhoun.
You're the director of player development now at UConn, and you can give the perspective to your current players of what life is like in the Big East. What are you telling them?
Every game is gonna be a battle. It's gonna be tough. You know what I mean? You gotta just hold on, just come out, just be ready for the fight every single game, basically, because every game was a battle in the Big East, from the Syracuse, from St. John's, from the Seton Halls. Like, every single game was a hard matchup for me at that point guard position.
Any other favorite moment that I haven't brought up yet that really sticks out to you? Maybe a home game at UConn or something else?
Ooh, that's a good question. There's so many memories. But I remember just playing against Melo at Syracuse, Troy Murphy, battles with Troy Murphy and Chris Thomas at Notre Dame. St. John's had Omar Cook, then switched over, and then I had to guard Marcus Hatton 2 years later. Seton Hall had Andre Barrett. So it was just so many battles every night. Pitt had Brandon Knight. So every single night was a battle. You just had to be prepared. Your team had to be prepared for the battle, and you guys had to be just locked in, ready to play.
One thing I think about, Talik, is in this version of the Big East, it's a little different. You got Xavier, Butler, Creighton coming in the league, so those will be some new rivalries. You faced Xavier last year. It was a wild double overtime game. I know you were close to winning that game. And then you faced Villanova. That was just a wild game. And talking to your guys and talking to Coach Hurley, he said those felt like conference games already.
Yeah. When we was at Villanova, the coaching staff was talking. We was like, yeah, this is the Big East. This is what it feels like to be back in the Big East. We're going to have games like this every single game next season. You know what I mean? So we're just fascinated and blessed to be back in the league.
what is your message to your fan base, which knows you all too well?
Just hold on, hold on to your horses. We are coming. We preparing, we working hard, we strategizing. We're just trying to get things right, but we are coming.
Let's go back to 2009, Donnie Marshall. This is a where were you type of game. UConn, Syracuse, quarterfinals, Big East tournament. Where were you for this game?
I was on the baseline, opposite end. Actually, we sit for the media today during the Big East tournament. I was actually in the same area watching this game, and then back in the locker room after. Playing against Syracuse was annoying, but I didn't realize how annoying their fans really were until after this game and being stuck in there trying to get out of there. Being a UConn guy, I tell you, I'm friends with a lot of Syracuse people now, but after this game, I couldn't tell you, and not even being a player in this game, I couldn't tell you how annoying their fans were after this game. But this was one for the ages. It really is one of those that you almost forget, and maybe because of UConn, you almost forget that who won and lost the game, because the game was just so phenomenal just to talk about. And then you're like, oh yeah, that's right. We lost that game, or we won that game, depending on which side you were on. So it really was one of those games that was an instant. I know we hear a lot of an instant classic.
That was moment number 5. Let's go to moment number 4 here, 2004.
Yeah, you talk about scorers. Rashad Anderson, Charlie Villanueva, Ben Gordon. How about an Olympic athlete, Ben Gordon, Josh Boone? I mean, this to me, Coach Calhoun has said my junior year with Danielle Mar. I should go to my senior year with Kevin Ollie and Jerome Sheffer and Ray Allen. He said was his best team ever. I think this is one of, if not the best teams UConn has ever had. Emeka Okafor. I mean, the names just go on and on and on. This team was stacked, man. That was one of the most powerful teams in all of college basketball history, I believe.
And this was a top 10 matchup with Pitt. It's not like they were significantly lower. It's just that's how dominant UConn was.
Yeah, not only that. I mean, again, Calhoun recruiting at its finest, man. One of the best ever.
Moment number 3. Here we go, Donnie. 1994. It's Danielle Marshall. The law firm, as Raf said, Donnie and Donnie. Marshall and Marshall.
I think this was the game. I think Danielle was 20 for 20 from the foul line, I think, in this game, if I recall right. I mean, he really got to a point where he could shoot them with his eyes closed. We felt, it was almost unfair if you fouled him. And this is what we did best. We ran, we shared the basketball.
There it is.
We were a confident team, man. We really had all the pieces. We had the confidence, and we were very unselfish. This was a fun team. A young Ray Allen was on this team. He didn't really get too many touches, actually, because at the time, but he made up for it though over his career there.
During this game, Raf said that you were look at that. That's a jam. Raf said that you were the law firm of Marshall and Marshall. I mean, what a phrase.
Yeah, that was fun, man. We, that team, we just played off of each other so well.
There he is. How about that hair?
Look at it. Already starting to lose some because of Jim Calhoun, though, I have to say, for the record. You know what? I will, to be fair to Coach, I'm sure we both made each other lose a lot of hair, Coach Calhoun and I.
Let's go to moment 2. And this is a game that's in everybody's memories for Allen versus Allen. There were other pros on the floor in this 1996 Big East title game. What an affair.
I got to be honest, to watch this game and see Allen Iverson and, obviously Ricky Moore, one of the greatest defenders in UConn history, and then to see John Thompson and Jim Calhoun, this to me personifies, at least after the Patrick Ewings and the Chris Mullins had left, this personified Big East basketball. You got 2 heavyweights on the sidelines, and Allen Iverson and Ray Allen. I always joke with Ray Allen about this game. Wasn't much of a passer, And the shot at the end, to not to bury the lead, I'm sure everyone kind of knows how this game finished. Even the shot was a pass. He didn't really want to pass. He wanted to shoot. He had no place else to go, and he actually passed it to the rim. And look at Jim Calhoun trying to reserve himself, but you know he really wanted to continue to jump up and down in John Thompson's face. That's awesome.
It's incredible. The personalities in that game. Look at Ray.
Oh,
that smile. It's timeless.
Yeah.
And there's games and moments that are synonymous with the Big East and its history, and it's why people say this league's just different. In this case, Donnie, 5 wins, 5 days, and then a national championship. But the 5 wins in 5 days against this competition, what do you make of what Kemba and this team did?
Well, listen, I am a huge fan of Seth Davis, and I remember Seth Davis saying, it can't be done. And maybe because of the way they finished the season, I think they were 9-9 to finish the year regular season. So obviously people are making their the best decisions they can when they say who's going to play when, how far they're going to play. But I remember Seth Davis saying that there's no way they can win 5 games in 5 days. And I tell you what, as a player, you hear that stuff. And nowadays, even more through Twitter and Instagram, there's so many different places you hear the prognosticators, if you will, saying you can or you can't do something. And I really think that's what fueled that team. And then obviously they go on to do something to shock the world. And it really catapulted Kemba Walker, a guy who sounds like his first name is out of a Disney cartoon, or rhymes at least with one. But he turned himself into, in a lot of people's minds, the greatest UConn player ever.
In a matter of just a couple of weeks.
That's it.
It's just incredible.
Yeah.
The man that's behind so many of the moments that we just showed is the leader, the head coach. Danny Hurley called him the GOAT, Jim Calhoun. And we're about to have a conversation with him, and the floor is yours, Donnie Marshall. What comes to mind when you think about playing for him and what separates him from other coaching greats?
The consistency of Jim Calhoun. And in a quick story, I was, just like everyone else you're going to talk to that played major college basketball, had a ton of coaches recruiting me, ton of coaches come to my home in Federal Way, Washington, just outside of Seattle. And Jim Calhoun came by himself. The only coach who came to our home by himself, got out of a cab, said, I'll call the cab when you want me to leave. He really kind of set the tone for now the other home visits. He was the same guy in that home visit, said, it's not just about basketball. It's about the rest of your life. It's about helping you become a man to, yes, win games, maybe win some championships, but it's about the rest of your life. Not one other coach came to my home. And I've had this conversation with Richard Hamilton and Kevin Ollie and Ray Allen and other guys. They say the same thing. It wasn't just about winning for Jim Calhoun. Even though in the back of your mind, that's what you want to do. Everyone finds success when we win. But for Coach Calhoun to come in and say, this is what it's about, and he's so right. Everything I have, my home, my beautiful children, the love and respect that I have in Connecticut, it all came because Jim Calhoun promised me something. If you put in the work and you listen to me, this is going to change your life forever. And it really did. And every single day I'm grateful to him. Howie Dickinman also, who was his assistant coach, close assistant coach. Those two guys never lied to us. And that is so hard to find in coaching 20 years ago and even today.
And that right there is one of many reasons why Jim Calhoun is a Hall of Famer. Let's hear from him now.
For a guy who was born in the Boston area, for a guy who grew up with Dave Gabbard as one of his mentors, all those things that happened to me, and then to be at Northeastern University very quickly for 14 years, and at the end, the Big East was formed, 1979, I believe, was the first year that it was formed. I was at Northeastern looking at it and saying, this is incredible. And by the time I got there in 1986 to UConn and stayed there 26 basketball years and 5 afterwards as a consultant, it was special. And the Big East is special, always will be special. It is clearly the brainchild of Dave Gabbard, the best ever, and all those people who really put together something very, very special.
Jim, what makes it special?
Proximity to some degree. I mean, we're a little more spread out now. We were when we had Notre Dame and Louisville, that type of spread out. But from Cheers, everybody knows your name, and you know your kid's name, and you see them all plays. That neighborhood rivalry, that's what it was, to try to dominate New York, the media capital of the world. Madison Square Garden, the best place in the world to know. That's said from a guy from Boston, okay, with the Boston Garden. My point being, there was nothing like it that I could have even imagined. And, you know, I think about great athletes, and I think about the ACC way back when. And then I think about the Southeast Conference in football. In my opinion, the greatest conference tournament and seasons. You can look at all the great things that were accomplished. Think about it. It was an incredible feeling that, like the Southeast Conference, we were the best conference in America. Our 2011 championship, people say, how many guys in I think there were 12 teams in the league who made 11 or 12 teams in the league who made it. I mean, in the NCAA tournament, special place. And as I said, winning the neighborhood battles is like, playing your brother in basketball, you got to beat him. Well, it's the same thing here.
Jim, I've heard people who have covered the team go so far as to say that you had more enjoyment in 2011 winning that Big East tournament of the 5 games in 5 days. And that's not to take away from the national title, but there was that just a different level of enjoyment being that best kid in the neighborhood and the way in which you did it. Would you go ahead and say that as well?
Well, 99 was great. 04 was great. It's like, who's my favorite son? I have sons. But nothing, discounting the national championship, could ever, 5 games, 5 days, 4 top 20 teams, and watch Kemba Walker put on display forever. I mean, that's one of the great basketball performances. Our kids were wonderful. And as I said, winning that battle at home around folks who knew you. I still, to this day, when I go to restaurants, other places, a Villanova fan will come see me, a BC fan, maybe, a Syracuse fan. But I think you know the point I'm making. There's a camaraderie amongst the players, the fans, the officials, all of us, that the Big East was more than special. Let me jump ahead a tad, but I think I can tell you that 5 games, 5 days was the most special time in New York I ever spent there. I remember us being, when they had the Allen game, Ray Allen, Allen Iverson. And we ended up winning at the end on a Ray bank shot or foul line jump shot. The excitement, walking afterwards outside the Garden, the streets packed with fans. There's nothing like it. And the coaching was, I think, of the group I was fortunate enough to join, 6 of us out of the 9 went to the Basketball Hall of Fame during the same era. It's phenomenal. And the players, I mean, legendary. It's just wonderful. I was going to ask anybody that wants to see what real basketball is like, maybe a throwback. And I mean this honestly. It won't be stock. It won't be not well attended. It won't be unenthusiastic. It'll be special. You walk into the building. I used to love semifinals, the 4 teams, and their fans are there. It's I get goosebumps talking about it.
And after hearing from one Hall of Famer, we have to hear from another, who is UConn women's basketball head coach Geno Auriemma. He was hired by the program back in 1985 and has gone on to produce dominance in the sport of women's basketball. A complete legend in and of himself. He's led the program to 11 national titles, and he has plenty of stories in his own to hear from as we take a look now at my conversation with Geno Auriemma. Coach Auriemma, this homecoming is not only for UConn, but personally for you yourself, having coached in the old Big East. What is some of the excitement you have surrounding re-entering the conference?
You're right about I've been part of the original Big East, the original 9 schools, and what that was like, and then the expanded Big East, and then the broken up little bit at a time Big East, and now I come back to a whole new Big East. So this is like my 3rd Big East. Actually, 1, 2, 3. This is my 4th Big East. But the whole time we were away, it never felt right for us. It never felt natural, where we were going, who we were playing, the feel of the games. It just didn't feel right. And everybody's competitive. Every night is a great game. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. And I'm looking forward to going into those towns and going into those arenas and feeling that feeling of, excitement that I used to feel whenever I go into those places.
You just mentioned getting that feeling a little bit there, Coach Auriemma. I know that through your 7 years in the American, you did play DePaul while you were there, but this past season, you also had the chance to play Seton Hall at Seton Hall, getting a little bit of that feeling. How is that a taste of what is to come this upcoming season and beyond?
Well, it's funny, when we were going down there, I said to our players, I said, you guys are in for a real treat, this is going to be way smaller than any place you play. It's going to be way different. The crowd is going to be like sitting right on top of you. And it's going to be a battle. And they loved the game. I mean, it was a great game. And I told them, I said, you guys that are coming back next year, I said, every night is going to be like this in every town.
When you think about the old Big East, what is one of your favorite, fondest memories maybe that you have that you're anticipating to kind of make new ones now returning to the Big East, but one that sticks out to you?
My greatest memories actually were the things that would happen when you were in those buildings. And we've had so many great moments, losing at Villanova, and the reaction was like those kids just won a national championship. I remember St. John's came in here at Gamble Pavilion and beat us on senior night, and I still see the kid. She's an assistant now. She's one of the assistants at St. John's. And every time I see her, she just has this big smile on her face. And I walk up to her all the time. I said, you little son of a gun, that's the only three you ever made in your life. So that, the kid from Georgetown that made a shot at the buzzer to beat us. And again, it was like celebrating a national championship. We played at Georgetown one time, and both of our starting point guards have fouled out. And we had a kid that used to be a manager, and we gave her a spot on the team that year. And we had to put her in the game, and she ended up making a layup to win. I mean, so many great memories of those games. So all these things, come back, when you envision being in those buildings again.
And Coach, when you're looking at this upcoming season with your team and the rest of the league, where do you see UConn women's basketball fitting in?
Well, things have changed a little bit, I think, since the last time we were in the league. I think we're still good. Don't get me wrong. We're still, one of the best teams in the country. And obviously, we're going to be this year coming up. But we used to be so far and away better than everybody that, you don't win 111 games in a row just because you're a little bit better than everybody. We were a lot better than everybody. And we were a lot better than the best teams in the country. So it wasn't like, we were dominating our league. We dominated every league. That's not us anymore. We're not there. There's more, it's a little more spread out. So where do we fit in? Hey, we had a battle last year with DePaul at their place, that the game wasn't decided till the last couple minutes. We had a battle with Seton Hall that the game wasn't decided till, later in the game. I just want us to be like a great addition to the league. That's probably the number one thing. Like the important thing for us is to be good for the league, to add a lot of value to the league, to conduct ourselves in a way that we bring a lot of positive attention and earn the respect of all of our opponents, the coaches, the fans. And yeah, we want to win. And yeah, we want to win every game, and we want to win every championship. Don't get me wrong. But we want to do it, the right way, and we want to earn their respect. And if we lose, we want to lose with dignity, and we want to win with class. And I want the fans in Marquette to be just as rowdy as they were when I went up there in the old days, where our bench is right next to the student sections. And those mothers, man, they need it. I hope they don't let them drink as much as they did back then, because, man, some of the stuff they said to me, I had to laugh. Sometimes I would walk by them and high-five them because I was laughing so hard.
We are so excited for many battles to come starting this upcoming season. Coach Auriemma, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome home.
Great to be home, and I hope we're there for the rest of my career, which would do wonders for my heart, believe me.
Well, Donnie, it's been great to go down memory lane and to tip off this new era for UConn basketball coming home to the Big East. But we would be remiss to not talk about things that go far beyond basketball, and it's a great community. Our basketball community is. It brings friends like ourselves together, and I'm curious to hear your perspective on the recent events of social injustice in our world and what you think needs to happen for action to result in true change.
Well, John, I would say three things that are really tough to talk about: politics, religion, and race. Everyone kind of has their own, or I should say racism. Everyone kind of has their own ideals of their upbringing and what they were taught, what they learned in school or what they didn't learn in school. And I would say all that stuff you learned and you didn't learn, throw it out, forget about it, and let's start today and let's listen to each other. Let's listen to people of every culture and every race, every belief, orientation. Let's listen to people than we are, and let's try to educate ourselves and learn. I was always taught that as a biracial kid growing up in Seattle, Washington. My mother's 100% Irish. My father was from the Ivory Coast of Africa. So I like to say I had the best of both worlds. I learned, racism, what it was about from both sides of the train tracks. To be able to teach my kids in this day, I don't think it's all negative. Obviously, what we're seeing on television, the deaths, the racism, especially against Blacks, I think this to me is something that can be teachable. We can learn from it. We're talking about taking statues down, taking flags down. I think these are things that we have to respect, we have to learn from and listen to one another. I don't think there's ever been a time, at least in my lifetime, where communication and listening has been more just more important. Just that it has to be the priority right now. And if we can help each other communicate and listen through sports and athletics, I think we have to lead from that spot. You can't run away from it. You can't say I'm not racist and think your hands are clean. You have to be able to help in proving why racism is wrong. And right now, to communicate, to listen to people's differences and to different people, I think is so very important.
Donnie, the basketball community has always been at the forefront on this topic of encouraging diversity, trying to make that change. What do you think is the role here, in particular, the Big East coaches and players out there, and those players who are thinking about, what can I do? What can I say?
I think what needs to happen is our leaders have to be leaders. And I think that's what we've lost. No matter where you are, who you like, if you like the president, if you don't, if you like your governor, if you don't, if you like your mayor, you don't. The leaders have to be leaders, whoever they may be. And in our world, our leaders are not just our athletic directors, the presidents, the chancellors of our universities, but it's also our coaches, I think, first and foremost, because that's who we're in most direct contact with. Our leaders, black, white, red, yellow, whatever color their skin is, our coaches have to be leaders to our young people. They have to allow them to have that freedom to speak and not be judged. Whether it's talking about X's and O's or it's talking about race relations, they have to listen to their players. They have to lead them. And sometimes, listen, we talk about, coaches being yellers and screamers. This, again, now is a time where our coaches have to lead by listening to your players and then also direct them. They're still young people. They're still teenagers, some of them. So you have to be able to guide them and navigate them through these waters, especially in a day where our young people, to me, our college-age adults, young adults, they're the ones that are going to lead us the right way. I saw a thing Dave Chappelle said a couple weeks ago, young people, drive the car. We're gonna sit in the back seat. We feel confident in where you're driving us to. Keep both hands on the wheel and steer us along the way. We really believe in you right now. But it's all about our coaches leading those young people and telling them, listen, you got to have your beliefs. You got to speak your mind. That's so important right now. But every coach, no matter what color, you got to lead your players.
I think about the Big East, and there's 5 black coaches. There are 6 white coaches. And I think it's absolutely right to say it is just as, if not more important, that those 6 white coaches are just as much in this effort as the 5 black coaches.
I got to tell you, John, again, having a blonde-haired, blue-eyed mother raise me, I learned more about diversity. I learned more about inclusion from her than anyone even close to my skin color. So you're absolutely right. It's not only important for you to learn from people who look like you, it's just as important to learn and to listen to people who don't look like you, maybe even more important. And when you talk about those white coaches, it's important for them to also say, listen, I've never been where you are as an African-American male. I've never been where you are as a LGBT, wherever you may fit in there, but I'm here to support you. So at some point you have to say, listen, we all bleed the same color inside. Let's do this together. So you're absolutely right. It's important for all of us. Our leaders have to lead.
Some really powerful perspective there from both Donnie and Renee, and it just bears noting that the conversation of racism and social injustice in our world right now has to be the top priority, because now is the time for that change to occur. Looking at the UConn Huskies, back with my colleague Megan Caffrey. Megan, your final thoughts on a significant day in the Big East.
John, I think the one way you have to summarize today is excitement. For fans, players, coaches alike, everyone is so excited to be welcoming UConn back home and for the many games that we are going to be excited to see in the near future.
You talked about excitement, and fans get excited across the country when they're thinking about their respective conference, whoever they root for, and they think about, hey, are you thinking about expanding? When's the expansion going to take place? Could there be a restructuring? Could this team join the league? Hey, this team makes sense. Well, Big East Commissioner Val Ackerman said it a summer ago. The Big East was not just looking to expand for the sake of expansion. This league, with 10, now 11 basketball-minded schools, it had to make sense. And in my mind, there are not many things that make more sense in college athletics than the UConn Huskies in the Big East Conference. We want to thank Fox College Hoops analyst, UConn great Donnie Marshall. We want to thank another Husky legend, Renee Montgomery, a rising star in broadcasting as well. We want to thank Danny Hurley, Geno Auriemma, Jim Calhoun for tipping off this show. And the show is back. UConn in the Big East. This has been Big East Shootaround. Plenty of fun to come. We appreciate you watching.